sure the panel are super excited about how much you talked them up. I tried to rev them up last night to get them ready as well, but that certainly will get them on their toes. So, hello everyone. My name's Andrew Hopper. I'm the Director General for the Department of Tourism, Innovation and Sport. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Gimoy Wallabara Yidinji people and the Irukandji Gurubana people and observe their continuing connection to land, waters and community. Pay respects to the people, the cultures and the elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to acknowledge all the First Nations people present in the room here today. As you can imagine, in my role, I hear how difficult or perhaps confusing it is working with government. It's interesting because I usually lead with, I'm from government and I'm here to help. But as it turns out, that isn't always the way we're received. This next session that we're going to do with the panel will certainly allow for you to hear from and engage with key decision makers in government who influence tourism's operating environment. We certainly can't do it alone. The tourism sector in Queensland, I think, works extremely well with government. Many of the success stories of 2023, in fact, are firmly based in government and industry partnerships. The most notable is, of course, or largest, the $200 million Attracting Aviation Fund, but there are many, many more stories of successful collaboration, be that with local governments, working with individual operators, or even up here in the north as we look to build the Wangedi Trail. So the scorecard. You recall that last year's DestinationQ on the Gold Coast, Minister Hinchliffe launched towards Tourism 2032, the 10-year strategy developed in partnership with industry to establish Queensland as Australia's destination of choice for visitors seeking world-class experiences. Along with this key target of the strategy set for the sector was also to achieve a $44 billion expenditure in overnight visitor expenditure within the decade. They are certainly ambitious goals, and today I can share the first year's progress against the strategy's three measures of value, they being economic, environmental and social. We're committed to providing these updates annually, and of course there'll be bits and pieces as we go through each year, but the key thing is every year at this forum, we'll be looking to update you all. After all, these targets were set through the outstanding work of the Independent Tourism Industry Reference Panel, led by Liz Savage, through those years that we all like to maybe just put behind us. Their consultation was deep with industry, and in their final action plan, Reshaping Queensland's Visitor Economy to Welcome the World, it was laid bare exactly what the industry thought was needed to support itself moving forward. Build focus is the aim behind phase one of the implementation of the strategy. Unsurprisingly, the same as this year's forum, obviously not a coincidence. Queensland is the country's #1 holiday market. We are also ahead of the national average in recovering international spend. We remain in pole position because of our natural advantages and all of you, our outstanding operators. But also because we have that plan and we're investing in that plan. We just heard the Premier mention the new $15 million to be added to the Growing Future Tourism Fund. That's on top of the already $260 million that's been invested in targeted initiatives to support this phase one. This investment is certainly reaping rewards, with tourism's economic impact strongly positive in our first scorecard. In June 2023, we achieved a record $33.2 billion in annual overnight visitor expenditure, up from $24.4 billion the year before. This puts us well and truly on track to reach the strategy's interim target in 2027 of $34 billion. And of course, the final target of $44 billion by 2032. Importantly, given there are so many regional tourism operators in the room today, we also know that tourism's gross regional product increased across every region in the state. This economic success is absolutely a testament to the outstanding visitor experiences on offer from all of you in every corner of the state, and of course, how you create and deliver them every day. There are some cautionary tales though. There are marginal decline in return visitation, regional disparity remains, and international visitation is still well below pre-COVID levels. We also anticipate some stronger headwinds in 2024, with the sector feeling the bite of tightening domestic spend, uncertain geopolitical conditions, workforce and skill shortages, insurance challenges, and ongoing supply issues. The reopening of international travel has also presented as a bit of a double-edged sword, and it may impact inter and intrastate visitation as Australians look to do what they all seem to love doing, which is to travel overseas for holidays. In terms of our environmental measures, we made good progress against these, increasing the number of eco-certified destinations and operators, as well as significant upswing in the number of operators catering for all access needs. And in other good news, we had more people visit the state's beautiful national parks. Our social measures, while largely positive, do give us pause to reflect on the changing social landscape for tourism operators. We saw small declines in communities that are supportive of tourism, who believe tourism has a positive impact and who support tourism's continued growth. Most people in the main, however, remain positive, and we know increasing positive community sentiment occurs by involving our community in tourism decisions and embedding sustainable and accessible practices. We need to support service delivery and business practices that exceed expectations for everyone, but that includes our neighbours and wider community. So, what's next? 2023 has been a great start on our 10-year journey. We've got 9 years left. Sounds a little bit like an Olympic speech and Paralympic speech, doesn't it? But we've got 2 years of this initial implementation phase before us, where we are focusing on restoring that demand to pre-COVID levels and investing in new products and experiences, getting our base right. We must create and expand great events and deliver infrastructure that supports everyone, our visitors and our local communities. In closing, before we really get to the panel, everyone seems to agree Cairns was a great spot for Tourism Week, and I absolutely agree. But mostly I agree, as we look to the future of tourism in our state, Cairns is a great reminder to all of us the power that tourism has to create a vibrant local culture and community, drive sustainable environmental outcomes, attract international talent, and build exciting career pathways for our young people. So with that, let's get our panel up and let's start asking some questions. Thank you. So what we're going to do is, I've got a couple of questions to get us started, and then there's a QR code which allows you all to pose questions, and that's been open for some time, so we'll have some questions that we'll work through, but I thought I'd try and warm them up a little bit for you. So to start that process, I thought we'd get up and do some exercises, but we're not going to, because I lost that early in the Welcome to Country, so that'd be copying. So we're not doing that. What I thought I'd do though is just quickly get everyone to introduce themselves, their name, where they're from, and then we'll dive into some questions. So we might start down the end with Trish.
Yep. Trish O'Callaghan, CEO, Tourism and Events, Queensland.
Max Wise, Deputy Director General, Disability Seniors and Carers.
Dominique Lamb, Queensland Small Business Commissioner.
Kirsten Herring, Deputy Director General Arts Queensland. Almost forgot.
Ben Klaassen, Deputy Director General, Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service and Partnerships.
Andrew Mahon, Deputy Director General, Department of Transport and Main Roads.
Justin McGowan, the CEO of Trade and Investment Queensland.
Thank you, everyone. They still look a bit stiff, don't they? Come on, guys. It's a safe space. And we've got a bit of Movember happening up here too. So there's 4 people, only 3 of us are participating, and 1 of us shouldn't. And the one that shouldn't is holding the microphone, but we'll get to that later. Now we are, as we heard earlier, we are live streaming and recording, so you should be really confident that whatever you say will be played back to you at a later date. But I want to start by asking each of you, and we'll start again down the end with Trish, in terms of, in your respective areas, what are you all doing to elevate Queensland to be the destination of choice moving forward? So Trish, you start.
Yeah, certainly, thanks for that. Hops, but Andrew today. But I think I've got a keynote speech straight after morning tea, so I won't take up too much of the airtime, but I think the TQ blueprint is really that guiding document that's being delivered, not just on behalf of the government, but working with industry. We do have that ambitious plan of growing from a $28 billion industry to $44 billion by 2032. There's a 5-point plan that backs that, and I know that plan was very much guided by industry. I'd also say there is a decade of opportunity in front of us. I think you can feel it in the room today. There's a lot of momentum and excitement. It's notwithstanding there are a lot of challenges in front of us, but if there was ever a time and a window of opportunity in our industry to be big, bold and different, it's certainly now, and you can see it every day in the businesses of the people that are here today.
Thanks, Trish. Max?
Thanks, Andrew. Look, I could probably talk about disability through to Tuesday, so, jump in if you need be. But
we might take you outside for the Tuesday bit, but
All right.
See you again now.
So the key thing to probably know about disability is that it's been a huge transformation over the last 6 or 7 years. It's gone from a position of 45,000 people receiving services via block funding that government provides, valued at about $1.5 billion. The NDIS investment that Queensland is jointly making with the Commonwealth has upped that service to about $10 billion at the moment, and that's going to grow by about another $5 billion by the time of the Olympics. It's huge. The money, unfortunately, can't be spent directly on tourism, so I can't offer that, but what it is, it's an enabler of people accessing the community. So, for example, if mum and dad who might have a disabled child with high physical needs want to come to Cairns for a holiday, they can actually take a support worker with them, or they can pay for a support worker to support them while in Cairns. So it's really helping families, or helping normalise family relationships. So mum and dad can go back to being mum and dad, for example. They're not necessarily the primary carers. The other key benefit of that is that if mum and dad aren't the primary carers, they can also get jobs and work, generate revenue for their own little family, and the opportunity to travel themselves is suddenly more accessible from a financial perspective, so that's key. From a Queensland perspective, what we actually want to see happen is, across the board, people with disability access the community and have the same experiences as everyone in our society. So when you look at Queensland, that obviously includes tourism, accessing all the fantastic locations that we have. So at a broad level, that's what we're shooting for. The disability funding that sits behind NDIS, as I said, is an enabler. From a tourism operator perspective, what's needed now is the sort of information you're going to find on the Year of Accessible Tourism website. So if you're not really in the space, you haven't made the move there, then have a look at the website. It's a fantastic resource. So great podcasts there. There's really no wrong place to start. And if you're uncertain, have a look at the web.
Thanks, Max. Dominique?
Currently, there are 492,000 small businesses across Queensland, and they contribute roughly about $119 billion to the economy, which is pretty significant. So for us, it's really about building awareness. At the Queensland Small Business Commissioner's Office, we're set up to enhance the operating environment for small business and then to minimise the time and cost associated with dispute. So at the moment, we're doing lots of work with all the councils across Queensland. We currently have 47 of the 77 councils signed on to be more small business friendly. And what we do with them is we work through programs that include placemaking, so activating those locations, including places like Cairns. We also work through things like streamlining or red tape reduction, procurement, and also data and analytics. And what our data shows us at the moment is that post the pandemic, we know that of the top 20 industries in small business, that they've all grown by at least 10%, which is pretty significant. We also know that, there are headwinds coming. We know that there are pressures. And so for us, it's about making sure that our small businesses stay in businesses and that they can continue to grow and work in their communities, because we know how much they contribute everywhere that they are. And so when it comes to tourism and attracting people here, it's about making sure that we have offerings, that local restaurant and hospitality provider is open when you need them to be. It's about making sure that people stay an extra night in a location so that they spend more money in the community. And it's also about making sure that that money stays in the community, especially when we're talking about First Nations and Indigenous tourism. So for us, it's really collaborative. We work with chambers, councils, with state government, and then we try and corral them to right size what they need in the places that they reside.
Thanks, Dominique. Kirsten?
Thanks, Andrew. Arts Queensland funds 80 arts and cultural organisations right across the state. That includes 18 Indigenous arts centres, all the way from Lockhart River, all the way down to Quandamooka. We're really proud of that, and that's a real investment focus for us to really drive opportunities to get more visitors to those Indigenous arts centres. We're guided by a First Nations Arts and Culture panel who is incredibly valuable to us in terms of making sure we're making the right decisions and working in the right way with the Indigenous communities. We're investing in First Nations performing arts product across the state to drive cultural tourism outcomes as well. In those arts organisations we fund, we have some of the great arts and cultural assets of Queensland. That includes Woodford Folk Festival, the Australian Festival of Chamber Music in Townsville, Festival of Outback Opera in Longreach, all the way up to Kayaf here and Shine on Gimoy, which launched this year. We're keen to expand our investment in arts and cultural tourism product. Cultural tourism is a great way for us Queensland artists to showcase their talent, but a great way also to get visitors to regional communities. So it's an exciting time for arts.
Yeah, well done, Kirsten. Certainly, I think the team's working probably closer together than ever before, so it's been brilliant. Thank you. Ben.
Thanks, Andrew. We basically are charged with managing and conserving the key areas that tourism relies on across the state. As you heard from the Premier, all those areas she was mentioning are falling under our stewardship. And we recognise and understand that having a strong partnership with the tourism industry is very important to showcasing the areas. They're a key part of the product, and you're as invested as we are in ensuring that they're there for future generations, and they're the key part that attracts people to come to Queensland. So working together is very important with us, with the tourism industry. We've got hundreds of operators we work with on a daily basis, and we really like to showcase what we're doing across the state. We're also a key provider of tourism product across the state as well. We had over 1.4 million camper nights across the estate last year. We deliver tours, we manage wildlife. So all those experiences that we like to look after contribute to the product that you're providing. And so we're really, really pleased to work with tourism. We see it as a key part of our role to support what the industry does, but we've also got to balance that against the role we've got to protect and conserve the estate. So sometimes they can be at odds, but we want to work with you and support that, and showcasing that for the 2032 Olympics is a key factor that we're working on, and look forward to working with the tourism industry as we can move forward.
Yeah, good on you, Ben. And again, just from some personal engagement recently, if we look to the Wangeti Trail, the partnership on that, across government, local government, and now engaging with operators, it's been brilliant. So yeah, well done, Ben. Andrew.
Yeah, thanks. So Transport and Main Roads has got a pretty big task ahead of us. We've got to try and design and build and deliver a single integrated transport network accessible to everyone. And certainly 2032 is a big opportunity for us to continue to invest. We've got a $32.1 billion infrastructure program over the next 4 years that we're currently rolling out. And there's a significant uplift in that in relation to public transport, and particularly rail, for the first time ever, over $9 billion in rail infrastructure and services on top of that. So significant investment coming over the next 4 years, and certainly up until 2032. And on top of that, we need to make sure that our services and our infrastructure is accessible to everyone, because everyone benefits when we have accessibility built into everything that we do. So we need to make sure that we're working on that really hard. We've got a lot of station upgrade programs. We've got a lot of bus stop upgrade programs across the state, as well as all of the services we provide, whether it's bus, rail, a ferry. We support the taxi and rideshare industry. Active transport, significant, and something that will play a big role in 2032, but is playing a bigger role across the state, and particularly in all of our major centres, Cairns, Townsville, Brisbane, Mackay, Rockhampton. Those centres are playing a much bigger role in relation to active transport. And the other little known area that we do play a role in, and traditionally haven't in the past, is our rail trails, which is a great tourism offering, and that's starting to expand across the state, working with councils, investing in rail trails that aren't being used, and a great tourism offering and a great opportunity.
Yeah, well done, and you guys are very active in that space, which is brilliant. Justin, the world's traveller. You've had some trips lately.
No, I think out of all the panel members, I've got the best job. But, I get the opportunity to really promote the state overseas. So we have 18 offices in 14 different markets. We have 8 offices throughout the state. And we've got a really good product to sell, right? So we're out there promoting Queensland at every opportunity, but not just from a trade perspective in typical goods and services, but Queensland is a great place to visit, study, invest, do business. So Trade and Investment Queensland also looks after Study Queensland and the study clusters throughout the state. We're back to that pre-COVID levels in terms of student numbers, about 135,000 international students now currently in the state. I think there's about 1,700 here in Cairns, but pushing harder for greater greater student numbers, and making sure, of course, that they've got accommodation before they arrive, but going hard on highlighting the attributes that differentiate us as a state. So we do that through our 2032 trade and investment strategy. The government gave us $150 million to go harder, and that's being much more ambitious and being very deliberate in our actions, diversifying the economy. You know, we do a lot of business with China, and that mission that the Premier talked about earlier was a really deliberate combined effort. So it had Trish and the tourism sector. We had most of the vice chancellors from the key universities across the state, as well as all of our trade and investment partners. And on the first day of the large China Import Expo, we did $45 million worth of deals for 28 of our exporters. So more and more, everything we do in the international domain will be promoting tourism, as well as the trade element, as well as the study and the education piece. So that's the bit that really excites me, and I think 2032 just elevates all of that, puts that on the map. We've already had delegations in from France talking about the Olympics, delegations in from 2012 from London, you know, whether it's talking about sports tech, whether it's talking about renewables, whether it's about, the transition to net zero. These big kind of anchor events and the lead-in elevate our profile, but they give us an opportunity to leverage those. And just one quick example is during the Women's World Cup, we had significant investors from both South Korea and Germany at one of the games. And that's resulted in a few billion-dollar deals. So just the spotlight that the Olympics puts on Queensland, I think and the fact that we've got a bit of lead time, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, and I think probably maybe not everyone knows, Justin and I are really privileged to sit on the TEQ board as well. So that integration across all things tourism trade is really live. And I think as we look to the sort of the major events coming in the lead up to 2032, we've obviously got a men's and women's Rugby World Cup coming in 27, 29 respectively. We've got the British and Irish Lions in 27, really tapping into some of the traditional markets, which is great and keeping us front and centre. Now, obviously that was all very positive, team. Good job. But let's talk about some obstacles that you all see, but also opportunities. And you've talked about a couple of them as you've gone through, but we can really nail down to what are some of those obstacles, challenges. You could turn them into opportunities if you want to be super positive. But if we can touch on some of those from your different perspectives as it relates to tourism, that'd be great. And just to mix it up, we're going to start with Justin and go back the other way. It's a pretty standard linear sort of approach. But Justin.
I guess from my perspective, I do see a lot of upside, and we've had, record exports of 144 billion last year, goods and services. I think there's more opportunities to work together across tourism and trade. I think the challenge for us at the moment, and we talked about there was 492,000 small businesses in the state. Queensland only has 15% of the exporters in the country. We need more businesses to realise their full potential, and we do that through grants and getting businesses ready, but I need to spread the word about the opportunities that exist offshore, and I guess getting those companies to really understand that we're here to support them on that journey, and how do we get them to grow. So it's really lifting the 6,900 exporters that we have at the moment significantly to really diversify the economy. And one of the challenges for Queensland is 80% of our exports are resources based. 74% of what we export goes to 5 countries only. So we need to do a bit of work in terms of economic resilience, and this is where we're going harder at emerging markets like India, Vietnam, Latin America, as well as working hard on our traditional markets.
Yeah, and I think the key element of the Attracting Aviation Fund has been that it's a whole of plane approach, and we've worked really closely with your team, Justin, and making sure we're contemplating not just what the holidaymakers are doing, but also there's the corporate travel, there's the freight, international students. I mean, that's all been a really, I think, successful approach and a really joined up approach.
Absolutely, and this is what airlines are seeking. It's a very competitive market, and I think we work really well together to get all those facts and figures and being quite creative. A good example is the Vietjet deal, where yes, it was about the front end of the plane, the belly of the plane, the numbers and all of that, but it was okay. Let's put a sales office in one of our universities. So thinking out of the box to really differentiate ourselves from the competition to get those flights across the line. But one of the key decisions for students and their parents is there a direct flight? If there's not a direct flight, they're questioning whether they want to study in that location.
And I think, probably Australia didn't realise the importance of international students until they were all gone. There's such a massive part of the tourism workforce as well, right? So yeah, it's super important. And I think I got asked the other night, Andrew, what do you think about government and its ability to move quickly? I won't give you the full version of what I said, but what was really interesting, if we think to that Vietjet example, that shift to add a sales office literally happened overnight and was the final piece in the puzzle that sealed the deal. So, I think when all the parties are joined up, really exciting, quick decisions can occur. Andrew, no small feat, your task. A couple of obstacles here and there, heaps of opportunities, eh?
Oh, lots of opportunities and obstacles, no problem at all. But I think from a transport perspective, we've got obviously a number of different obstacles. Firstly, such a spread out, diverse state. We've got huge challenges for different transport offerings all across the state, whether that's linked to tourism, whether that's linked to people getting to their jobs and through their daily lives and so forth. Funding is always a challenge, and we need to prioritise from an investment perspective in relation to infrastructure. That will always be a challenge, and we will always have to make decisions, or government will have to make decisions to prioritise in that space. We are struggling at the moment, like the tourism sector, I suspect, around workforce and attracting people to the transport sector, whether that's in the freight and heavy vehicle, whether that's in rail, whether that's in buses, rideshare, taxi, all of the sectors that everyone relies on to get around and particularly get freight around is a significant challenge. So we've got to try and do our best to work towards attracting more people to the sector. Low unemployment is fantastic, but it does mean it makes it really difficult to get people to move around and move into different sectors at times. So that's going to be a challenge for us always. And the other one really on our doorstep right now, and a significant amount of investment has been put, and energy from the government has been put into it, which is decarbonisation and transitioning our fleet to reduce costs and to reduce emissions and to make our fleet far more green and far more effective in that respect, because we've got a lot of buses across the state, we've got a lot of rail across the state, we've got a lot of heavy vehicles across the state that are doing great work, but we need to try and decarbonise as much as we can too. There is certainly a green element and certainly a benefit to the environment, but of course there's also a cost benefit long term as well around how we reduce costs of the transport sector. So really important for us to think about that. Many more challenges. Accessibility is certainly a challenge, and a lot of investment is going into our network in that space. But we have a big network. We have a lot of bus stops that we work with a lot of local governments on, and ownership between local government and ourselves. We've got a big rail network. We've got a lot of stations. We've got a lot of work to do, but there is a significant program in that space.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Andrew. Ben, from your perspective, some obstacles, opportunities? There's plenty, but some of the key ones that, look, I think we're doing a body of work around accessibility for people with a disability. Obviously, the natural environment presents challenges around how we do that. So we've got a project at the moment where we're working with some disability experts to try to get greater access into the national park estate. So there's a body of work that will roll out in 2024 and continue as we head towards the Olympics. So that's an important priority for us. I think climate change is presenting a range of challenges in our day-to-day park management activities. We're seeing significant impacts on wildlife, on ecosystems, and the natural environment that will flow through to tourism operators, and we've got to work collaboratively to ensure we're getting in front of that, working on what we need to do, making sure that the environment is sustainable and is protected for the future generations and the businesses. So I think there's a body of work that we're doing around that, which will underpin some of our key contributions in that towards 2032 plan. The other challenge for us is maintaining and ensuring the infrastructure across the network is up to the right standard, knowing that we've got the Olympics coming. National parks will be a showcase, so we want to be able to showcase those properly, and that means we need to have a level of investment that needs an uplift, and we're working on that with government at the moment. Yeah, we got a great piece of advice from a gentleman who worked on London. He talked about the games have a great ability to show off a destination, but also show it up. So we certainly want to make sure we're getting all the bits right. Kirsten.
Thanks, Andrew. I think for cultural tourism events and festivals is very rarely an overnight success, and we need to invest in them over a period of time. And some of those wonderful experiences I was talking about, Woodford Folk Festival is 30 years old, Kayak is 15 years old. We need to invest in the experience, and we need to invest in the time to help these festivals and events grow over time to become these fabulous events. So I think often we can want outcomes too quickly. And just one event we're working with now, Festival of Outback Opera out in Longreach, we're finding visitors want experiences that are unique and different. So we're doing opera at the Age of Dinosaurs Museum, for example. But then the ultimate challenge for Longreach and Winton is, again, capacity, accommodation, airfares. So we're doing some great work with Queensland Rail now to actually bring visitors out there, and the overnight sleeper carriages. So we've just got to think a little bit differently, I think.
Yeah, well done, and I agree that 3 to 5 years realistically for some of these events starting from scratch to get stood up, assuming they've got the right level of funding and assuming the idea is a good one. So yeah, they definitely take time. Dominique, we've got over 95% of the tourism businesses are small to medium enterprises, right in your wheelhouse. What are the obstacles you see and opportunities?
Look, for clarity in our space, anyone with less than 20 employees is a small business. And what we hear everywhere we go across Queensland is the top 3 concerns for small business at this time, including tourist operators, is skill shortages. And then if I can get people, I find it difficult to house them. And then thirdly, of course, cost of living. And that's very broad, from anything from freight challenges, the cost of getting supply into a location. It's interest rates. For many small business owners, their loans are attached to their home loans. So we see that those interest rates really do put pressures on them. But what we are seeing more than anything through our assistance line at the moment is when we look at our sort of tourism and accommodation component of those calls that are coming through, it's very much financial stress and financial literacy around things like tax. So we know that the Griffiths Tax Clinic tells us that if you're a small business and you have a piece of accounting software in your business, so MYOB or Xero, something of the equivalent, you're 80% less likely to be insolvent. And we know that for many small businesses, they just simply don't want to pay the subscription, can't afford the subscription, or just they haven't prioritised it because they, got into business because they're doing something that they love. But for many of our small business owners, it's about also being the accountant, the marketer, all of those things. And so it becomes quite burdensome. So we are seeing a prevalence of a lot of mental health issues coming through on our assistance line as well. And look, in order to respond to some of those things and to provide small businesses with, tangible things that they can do or implement or support in their business, there's a whole raft of supports out there. So at the moment, there are 330 free mentors for growth that small businesses can tap into on any topic. If you want to supercharge your social media, if you want to talk about scaling, if you want to look for staff, whatever it might be, they're all available to you, and we can refer them in, or Business Queensland can. There's also free financial counsellors available, and they also have a fund where they can provide up to $5,000 to provide you with support to get to where you need to be if you're looking to, grow that business or invest in a piece of equipment or whatever it might be. There's also wellness coaches that are available. Again, it's not an application process. You simply get referred in. Of course, there's lots and lots of grants and supports out there, but what I'd encourage you to do, certainly as tourist operators, would be to look to your councils as well. There's an excellent tool called Grant Guru, which will allow you to see all of the funding that's coming out, and only 30% of the support out there for small business is actually government funded. The rest are other private enterprises. So there's lots of room to grow and invest in your business, but there's also lots of room for you to get those basics right, to take some of the stress out of the day-to-day work. And we see that as soon as that happens, as soon as that pressure is removed, they flourish. There's an incredible experiential tourist operator in Winton at the moment that is building their own art gallery, and they're, creating all sorts of different art, but also taking people through immersive experiences and doing incredible things. And it's because they've seen that investment. They've, spent the time on those basics. They've looked at their finances. So if I can encourage you all to do anything, it's get those basics right.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Dominic. That was awesome. Alex. Max, sorry.
No problem.
Who's Alex?
I don't know.
You can call me Anthony if you want. Everyone
he can
does.
answer if you like.
Yeah. Will he know what he's talking about?
Okay, so I would say the challenges and opportunities from a disability space sit at a few levels probably. The overarching one I've touched on already, which is that people with disability and their families are a new and growing consumer lobby with access to $10 billion in Queensland in personal supports. that is a great enabler for them. What we hear back about tourism through our networks is that of those people with disability and families who travel regularly, the online information could be better. I think it's about 80 or 86% of people in the survey I saw said that more information is needed. To give you an example, part of my responsibility, I organise and I support a Disability Advisory Council for Minister Crawford, the Disability Minister. So people come from all around Queensland. We've got a dozen members, 8 wheelchair or use wheelchairs, and so we will arrange travel to Brisbane for them. We'll find a hotel. We'll actually go to the lengths of visiting the hotel, measuring the width of corridors, measuring the space between beds and walls, and we'll communicate that back to them so they have an understanding of what physical space is available, and then maybe take a photo of access to showers and things like that. So the depth of information, you can almost probably not provide too much information, I would say. There are great tools, again, on the Accessible Tourism website and self-assessment and all that kind of thing you can go through. Great starting point. But the main challenge is understanding that it's a very, very strong consumer lobby that's growing. It's starting to raise its voice. By 2032. It's going to grow to about 180,000 people in the NDIS, we expect. That's just in Queensland. It's one area to keep an eye on. Secondly, the other challenge we would also point to is the employment of people with disability is much lower than we would like, including, it's across all sectors, it's not just tourism. So people with disability experience unemployment at twice the rate of the general population, and for anyone with autism, it's twice that again. So a great way to probably build your capability as an operator is to actually employ people with disability. Do that, then you get first-hand insights into inclusion. Apart from that, there's a range of other organisations you can go to. We fund a series of disability peaks, about 9 disability peaks across all disability types. Give them a call, if you've got any questions, if you want to dip a toe in the water or just extend where you are at the moment to understand, or alternatively just get accustomed to seeking feedback from your customers and clients with disability. You might be surprised what you learn and how it can actually help give you a bit of a competitive advantage.
Thanks, Max. Way better than Alex. Trish, to round that out, and then we're going to go to questions from all of you. Trish?
Yeah, supposedly just 2 things. So I know as much as there are many headwinds, the 2 biggest things I'm hearing about is the cost of living is definitely starting to bite. It's not necessarily cancelling visitors' intentions to holiday, but it's certainly changing their behaviour, so they may shorten their trip or they may choose to not book an experiences. And when I'm travelling in the regions, that's very much coming through. They may be there and they may still be eating out, but they might not do that reef trip or they might not do that jet boat. So how we ensure that we're able to convert that intention but also package and work with the destination, I think is going to be critical over the next 12 months. I think the other one that's really pressing is the rebuild of our international market. As Andrew said, we are 85% rebuild and we should be really proud of that, but that last 15% is proving exceptionally hard and it is really competitive. And I know we always talk about hunting impacts, and as cliche as that sounds, it really is the model that we need to ensure that we get that 15% back, but also nearly double to 2032 and grow an 11 billion industry. And I look at the last few months, it is very strategic for us to be travelling with our RTOs, and we're sitting with our airports in their negotiations. And when you have Andrew sitting there with the AIF, the Aviation Attraction Fund, you have myself there saying, here's how we can back it up with marketing with the RTO. And then you have Justin saying, well, here's how we can fill the belly of that plane. And whether our Premier or the Minister is there saying, and from a political point of view, we're opening up our destination with open arms, that strategy is the only way we're going to rebuild not just that 15%, but grow to 11 billion by 2032.
Yeah, thanks, Trish. Great insights, and great insights panel generally across all your areas. Now, going to go live. So now we're going to go into the questions from the audience. Ben, first one for you. Will there be initiatives or changes to ensure national parks receive adequate funding and maintenance to offer world-class experiences?
Yes, well, we're doing that. So we're investing $68 million in our capital program this year. We've got key projects that we're delivering. Magnetic Island, we've just upgraded the Forts Walk. Encourage you to go and have a look at that. We're doing Wongetti Trail in partnership with Department of Tourism. We've got $16 million investment at Springbrook National Park to upgrade the Purlingbrook Falls Walk, deal with the challenges that will affect many operators there, as parking is a major problem down at that location. We're doing upgrades an hour west of here at Lake Eacham, $6.8 million upgrade to Lake Eacham, which is a fantastic place where you can go out and have a nice day on the lake, see a freshwater crocodile. People don't like the freshwater crocodile, but it's there.
I think generally crocodiles as a collective...
They don't bite you, Andrew. They'll be okay.
They rub up against you, though.
They might. If you leave it alone, it'll be all right. We're doing boardwalk upgrades in the Daintree. There is a program, and we recognise that the infrastructure that exists in the national parks is really important for tourism operators who are taking people out there and showcasing it. So we've got a program to invest in that boardwalks, walking trails, amenities, and trying to showcase the parks. We would like to increase that, and we'll be sort of continuing to talk with government about how we can uplift that program.
Yeah, and we're certainly very happy to continue to be an advocate for that. And I think, Ben, it'd be fair to say you could probably complete it all and then be starting to do it all again almost immediately. I mean, it's a big parks estate, so you guys have got a monumental job. Now, little Tay question. I was going to throw this to Justin, but he's probably not the right person, so I might toss it to Trish. Trish, the way it's posed, why is our state missing out? We want Taylor Swift. I assume that's a collective view from the audience. I'm a big fan, only because I have to listen to it at home. Trish?
Yeah, I know my 18-year-old son asks me this question all the time as to why Tay is not coming to Queensland. And I've got to say, we would all love to see Taylor Swift, and I've spent a lot of time with Harvey Lister and Alan Graham on this issue. And I think what we're seeing post the pandemic is the appetite to attend these artist concerts are massive, and they're huge, and the artists are out on tour. But what we're seeing as a new trend is that if they can come to one or two destinations in a country and an artist doesn't have to move and you don't have to pull the infrastructure up and down, and there is a potential to sell 2, 3 or 4 shows out of one destination, that's what they're doing. So we know with Taylor, she locked in Sydney and Melbourne. And I think in light of that as well, I think with the demand the artists are, and with what other states and countries are willing to pay, we're also seeing another trend where artists will play one state or one country if they can be backed up by whether it's a state tourism organisation or another entity, so that paying really big dollars to hold them in one area. So I think all I can say is we're working on a couple of exclusives ourselves for Queensland, and hopefully we'll have some announcements. We're very conscious though that, we are custodians of taxpayers' dollars, so we have to do a lot of analysis to ensure that we're not just going after the name, that we are going to see the return on the ground to our destinations and to our state, but I can also give you some confidence there will be some further announcements.
Good on you, Trish, without a doubt. Now, this one really, I could direct it in lots of different directions, but I think I'm just going to throw it open to whoever wants to step in first, and then if no one does, then I'll have to pick someone. But you've all talked at different points around skill shortages, and the economy's growing. We want the tourism industry to grow. How do you propose that these skill shortages can be dealt with and addressed across your relevant areas? Or Dominique?
So at the moment, there's been well over $70 million committed to investing in skills across Queensland, and certainly in the vet space in particular. There are industry workforce advisors. I know that they're definitely here, so if you haven't met them, go and have a chat to them. They are based by industry. What they're able to do is connect you to people, but also funding associated with those people. So if you were looking to hire people with disability, for instance, They would be able to put you in touch with those pools of people. They would also be able to put you in touch with just managing that through, obviously, your business if that's not something you're familiar with. There's also been investment around a number of employee value propositions. So there is Workforce Evolve, that is a collaboration between Business Chamber Queensland. You don't need to be a member. You can log on. There's an entire training program, policies available, and also mentors that you can access to keep people in your business. So we know that it costs you about, I think, 61% of the person's annual wage to replace them. So you want to keep the people that you've got if you can. In terms of skills as well, there is a free micro-credentialing course being run out of the University of Sunshine Coast, which is also all online, which is workforce planning. And there are a number of HR grants available for about, I think it's up to $5,000 to help you with some of that policies, anything that you need. And there is also our Mentors for Growth, of course. So if you're looking for recruitment, you're looking for a specific type of skill set, there are a number of those mentors that specialise in this space that you can also tap into. So look, if you're running out of ideas, obviously have a look at Business Queensland, certainly contact the Department of Youth Justice, Employment, Small Business and Training, or DigestBet. And look, they'll be able to put you in touch with wherever you need to be based on industry.
Yeah, thanks, Dominic. Does anyone else want to attempt to add to that? That was very thorough. Justin?
If I can just add briefly, the government announced only a few months ago the establishment of what's called the Skilled Workforce Attraction Office. And this is where we really need to up our game in terms of competing for talent as a state. So working closely right across the government to make sure that we really understand what the skills deficit is, the talent deficit is, who's on the skills list, and who do we need to target in terms of migration. We know that international students, only 17% of them stay on after they do a degree, right? And we know that the federal government's changed the visa arrangements where if you do an undergrad, you can stay on for 4, Masters 5, PhD 6, so they can actually stay into the workforce. How do we become the easiest place in the country if you study in one of our institutions nationally, that you come to Queensland and you offset some of that talent issue for us? So working hard on that to make sure that we've got a glide path to get as many of those students to stay on as possible. But this is a tricky one, right? And I think we've got a really good product to sell, but we've got to do a better job at influencing the federal government in terms of these are the skills that we need, and this is how many visas we need as a state.
Yeah, and I think a couple of you have touched on the fact that the reality is we're in a super competitive marketplace. We're not the only country chasing talent, so it is certainly challenging. There's no doubt about that. But good to hear there's some plans in place. Insurance. Certainly we understand it's been hard for business, and the question is, how can the state help? I'm going to throw to Dominique again.
Look, so we're very aware that for many operators that insurance has increased across the board, whether it's your professional indemnity or public liability or whatever it might be, by 34 to 80%, depending on who you're insuring with. And in some instances, especially if you're offering an experience, if you're in the adventure realm, it can be very hard to even get insurance onshore. This is an issue that is being looked at by obviously both state and federal government, and collectively there's an equivalent small business commissioner in every state and territory, as well as a federal small business, family and enterprise ombudsman. We are currently sitting on a number of committees and working with the Australian Insurance Council to really work with their members, obviously, to get better outcomes across the board. We have seen some success around the reinsurance pool if you are in a location that's had or been impacted by disaster. But more than anything, we need to see a whole industry shift in that insurance space, and there is lots of work being done. In fact, the commissioners will now set up our own group to try and start to get movement because we think it's taking too long. So we are working on it. It's just going to take some time.
Did anyone else want to add to insurance? No? Okay. Next question. We've obviously heard a lot about China today, and we've heard a lot about China over an extended period, and I think one of the big lessons during COVID was being too heavily invested in China could actually be a problem, in a range of areas, I might add. Trish, India. We're obviously, the Aviation Attraction Fund, that's one lever, and we're certainly in hot pursuit of an Indian airline, and Justin mentioned earlier about direct flights and the importance of those. From your perspective as a market, talk to us about India v China.
Yeah, and I think Justin will probably have a little bit to say about this. So strategically and policy-wise, we're at a good place. We saw our Treasurer and our Minister launch the strategic partnership and strategy for the Indian market. The Minister will be leading a delegation in a couple of weeks' time with myself. TIQ will be there, Andrew, you'll be on that as well. And again, we're taking that model of our airports, our RTOs, and our relevant industry with us. This is a really big potential for Queensland. Queensland has not had direct flights to India in its history. Opening up that aviation capacity is going to be critical to us leveraging this market to its full potential, and it is a huge market. It's the fifth largest economy at the moment. Its GDP is about 3.7 trillion, and its growing middle class is exceptionally significant. So we hear you. We will be there. We need to open up our air capacity first and foremost, but we do have an in-market team there that is very much driving awareness about Queensland and our destinations, but we know that we'll have to turbocharge that, and I think the trade component, which Justin is leading, is really helping those efforts at the moment.
Yeah, the opportunity of India is not lost on us. The most populous nation on the planet, 1.4 billion. The middle class, it's 715 million people now in the middle class. We used to have this view of India, it's too complex to do business, it's a challenge. It's 28 different states. One of the states, Maharashtra, where Mumbai is, has got a larger GDP than Singapore. So it'll be the world's third largest economy by 2030. We're doubling down on India. Minister Hinchliffe will open our office in Mumbai, putting 8 staff in there, 3 dedicated to student attraction initially. The trade opportunities there are huge. We're doing a lot of coal, we're doing a little bit of mets, very little ag. With the diversification of the India opportunity is something that is a huge opportunity for Queensland. And I think other nations are seeing this. We've seen a lot of Canadian pension funds now backing India. Even QIC's put some money into India. So India is not the India that we once knew 15 years ago. It is now a very modern, vibrant economy. We've had an office there for about 15 years in Bangalore, focusing on the tech sector. And now with the new strategy that India has to move away from a services-based economy to a manufacturing-based economy is really seeing their economic rise. So that middle class is a big target for us. And I think when we go after things now as a state, we do it very deliberately and we go with a reasonable amount of resources and money behind it, not just dipping our toe in the water. So I think this sends a really, really good intent. So high expectations for the Minister to bring home some flights and things, but I think it's great that just like the India opportunity, we went in earlier this year after the Prime Minister signed the free trade agreement, was a part of the free trade agreement with India, this kind of high sentiment towards Australia, and then the first thing they think about is Queensland. Having said that, they may not be big fans of us following the cricket, but fun fact, the stadium in Ahmedabad where that was played, 130,000 people attended that game, designed by Populous. Queensland company designed that stadium. So we've got good examples to pluck to say we're already doing great business with them. But yeah, 715 million middle class by 2030 is really the prize for tourism.
Yeah, and I think I've just been contemplating when I raise cricket on that trip, but I think I'll let them open with it and then I'll take their lead. Moving on to our next question, Andrew, this one for you, unsurprisingly. Raising the transport issues here in Cairns, stopping us getting, what is stopping us for Cairns getting a light rail system to support the community, and particularly as it relates to getting young people access to work opportunities. So there's a couple of components to that. Obviously, if we just tackle the transport component for you, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So we're always looking at how we can increase and improve the network, whether it's bus, active, personalised transport, taxi, rideshare, all those things in our regional centres. Light rail is something that comes up from time to time in different centres, and obviously we've invested significantly in light rail on the Gold Coast, which is supported by a significant population. It can be very expensive. It is an expensive infrastructure, so we need to make sure that where light rail is implemented, that we have the support of the community, we have the volumes to accommodate it, and that we've made sure we've done all the due diligence in that space. So it's certainly something we can look at as our regional centres grow, and where it can work, and where other opportunities and options can work as well, because there are alternatives to light rail and bus that are starting to come into the network and be introduced both in Australia and overseas, that give similar levels of high volume capacity and high volume transport. So it is something that we can certainly look at as regional centres grow like Cairns, but it is an expensive public transport mode, and we do not necessarily always get huge amounts of community support. We get varied support in different places where we've trialled and tested it, but certainly on the Gold Coast it's been incredibly successful, and it was the only public transport, it is the only public transport network that has exceeded pre-COVID levels. At 110% of pre-COVID levels. So every other public transport network in Queensland dropped during COVID for obvious reasons and haven't quite come back to the pre-COVID limit numbers, but our light rail service on the Gold Coast has exceeded it. So it can be really successful, but we need to make sure we prioritise, plan and get the right outcome for communities.
Yeah, and I think we were fortunate up here a couple of weeks ago. We were up for the regional forum and we did a tour of the Maritime Precinct, and Assistant Minister Healy raised the fact that right now there isn't a bus service down into that area, and that that's something that he's raising, and that comes back into government to be thought about and prosecuted. So certainly for the people of Cairns, continue to raise those things, and Assistant Minister Healy, among others, is a real supporter, obviously, of here, and unsurprisingly quite a loud voice for the region. Righto, so we're going to now, Kirsten, for you. What's happening from your perspective, the intersection between cultural tourism and accessible tourism? What are you seeing there?
Thanks, Andrew. I think it's incumbent upon us as the owners of a lot of infrastructure that targets cultural tourism to make sure that it's as accessible as possible. Arts Queensland oversees the South Bank Cultural Precinct in Brisbane, so we've been gradually improving the access to where we can to code to make those venues as accessible as possible. We also need to invest more in the artists that are presenting to audiences, and we would love to have more artists with disabilities. So I'm saying what Max was pointing out before, that whether you're neurodivergent or whether you have a physical disability, we want to be able to create the career paths for those artists going forward. And I think with the 2032 Paralympics Games, it's that unique opportunity to really drive the growth in the artist workforce for artists with a disability. There's a lot of new infrastructure coming on site across Queensland generally. We've seen the Cairns Performing Arts Centre open, and I know it's world class when it comes to accessibility. The Rockhampton Art Gallery that the Queensland Government, the Rockhampton City Council invested in too. We have Townsville that's getting to the late stages of its business case for a brand new concert hall. And there are all those opportunities now that we have to make those infrastructure investments as accessible as possible and world class, so that when they host those amazing festivals, events and performances, they're as accessible as possible to tourists.
Yeah, brilliant. Now, just as we wait for the next question to come up, I'm just keen to understand, you've all spoken at different points here about different elements. I'm keen to understand what you see by way of opportunity to collaborate further as a group. I mean, as individuals, everyone's doing a lot of amazing work. And what I find always interesting in these forums is you learn a little bit about what everyone else is doing, even I do. What's jumped out at you as we've had our conversation here this morning, where you think, you know what, I'm going to pick that up with someone and I'm going to go and have a chat about that because I think there might be something in that. Justin, anything spring to mind?
I think there's always opportunities to better collaborate. We're looking at things about having other government agencies embedded with TIQ so they can look at the policy settings and then what does that mean for economic development. So working better together for those key sectors within TIQ. I think we're all on a whole range of committees, and the fact that we're sitting on each other's boards really helps. And as much as we like to plan and have a strategy, and we all have strategies, there's those incidental opportunities that arise where we need to join those dots. So I think it's just more conversation, it's more getting out in the region. So TIQ has had its board meeting up here this week, getting out there, talking to clients, talking to operators, taking my board to one of the distilleries here that is a tourism attraction, but also doing great in exports. So, highlighting the intersection between those two things. Yes, we're selling product overseas, but at the same time, it's a major tourist attraction here in Cairns. So those kind of opportunities, I think, just keep working together.
Others?
Look, I think for arts and cultural businesses and small tourism businesses to access the supports through Queensland Small Business is fantastic. So, I think if Dominique and I are already going to catch up together in Brisbane to actually talk about how we can bring our agencies closer together. Justin's had me ear-bashing him about First Nations visual arts in the Trade and Investment Queensland network overseas. First Nations fashion is a fantastic opportunity for the state, again, as we're working towards 2032. So I do think we've all got, I think I had another go at Andrew last night about how I can get better freight for First Nations visual artists out of the Cape to get down to Kayaf because it's very expensive. So where there's an opportunity, I'll be banging on the door, don't worry about it.
Transport's always very popular in those dinners and meetings.
Absolutely.
I can have a go at that one as well. Look, I have spoken a little bit today about the opportunity for operators to contact our PIC network. Looking at it from the other perspective, I could also arrange for that network to do its own kind of unique piece of research within the different cohorts of people with disability to identify in more depth what they might be looking for in terms of a holiday or tourism experience. That's something we could definitely work on. Picking up on Kirsten's point, there's a great network of First Nations people with disability who are artists based on the Sunshine Coast who I know would love to have an exhibition somewhere, so I'll have a chat with you about that. Just a couple of quick ones there.
Yeah, brilliant. And we're unfortunately, folks, out of time. And I know there was still questions coming through. I'm sure I've just cut some people off, so I apologise. But what I did want to do was very sincerely thank you all for making yourselves available here this morning. Thank you for your candour and your honesty. Hopefully all of you took away from this that government is actually quite aligned and working together. We are genuinely here to help. It may not always feel like it. But please rest assured, grab us. There's a few of us will be hanging around. I obviously will all day. But don't be afraid to grab us and keep raising things because we ultimately need to hear from all of you so we can serve you in the best possible way. So thank you for your time and thank you, panel members.